DocTalk is brought to you by Merck Animal Health, the science of healthier animals.
Hey folks, welcome to DocTalk. Dr. Dan Thompson here. Glad you joined us. We're going to have a great show today. My guest is Dr. Tim Parks. He's a veterinarian from Merck Animal Health, and he's based out of Holton, Kansas. Been a great resource for me throughout the years. We're going to talk about preventing BRD. So stay tuned, and we'll be right back after these messages.
As dependable as the sunrise, in dairy parlors, open pastures, on ranches and feed yards across America. A place where reputation is more than a name, where the science of healthier animals is a way of life. It's the responsibility that drives who we are and what we do. Every decision, every day. It's your livelihood and our responsibility.
This segment is brought to you by the Beef Quality Assurance Program and the Kansas Beef Council, improving animal care and beef safety for more than 20 years.
Hey folks, welcome to Doc Talk. Dr. Dan Thompson here with my friend and colleague, Dr. Tim Parks. Dr. Parks is a veterinarian. He has been in veterinary practice for many years in Northeast Kansas and around the Holton area. And he is a veterinarian, tech service veterinarian for Merck Animal Health, where he's getting to see a lot of cases, a lot of animals, and bring us a lot of solutions. So welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks a lot, Dr. Dan. Glad to be here.
As we were kind of setting up for the show and talk about preventing BRD, you said there's a few scenarios that are going on there these days in the fall in our industry.
Yeah, as we look at, this time of year, it's an interesting time because we've got newborn babies that are hitting the ground and we're finishing up fall calving. We've got spring calves that we're getting ready to consider weaning. Here in Northeast Kansas, we're 55 degrees and wet today, and we were 90 3 days ago, and we're going back into the 80s. So we've got all these different scenarios coming into play. Really, two different animals that we've got to deal with and try to start setting them up, because when it comes to bovine respiratory disease, we'd much rather prevent it if we can, because treatment can be unrewarding at times and very costly. So anything we can do to try to set these animals up is sure going to benefit us as we see them move through the cycles.
You bet. And when I start to think about BRD, we always think about just the weaning time, and you kind of stop me when you say, hey, we got baby calves being born and we've got calves that are being weaned all at the same time. BRD prevention starts right when those calves are hitting the ground.
Yeah, and I think as we look at how we've handled calves differently over the last several years, we're starting to intervene with these calves at an earlier age. And as we've seen some intranasal products come to the market and things along those lines, really allowing us to start setting these calves up at a time frame when we used to think maybe we weren't getting the best bang for our buck as we were working them. I think one of the things as we start thinking about setting up babies, we always refer to this as branding time. We're going to process these calves at branding, and we always like to think that branding is it's one day and those calves are all the same age. And they're not. We've got a 65 or a 90-day calving season, so we've got calves that may be anywhere from a newborn all the way up to 3.5 months of age. So really making sure we're handling each of those animals and doing the things we can to really set each animal up, not just an individual animal trying to get it ready.
Right. And then you mentioned that we do have the weaning. And so I guess when we come back, we're kind of setting this up that there's an understanding that when the animal hits the ground, from that point forward, if we're on offense immunologically and setting that animal up for success, rather than just sitting back and waiting to see what happens when we buy a group or wean a group, there's many things that we're going to be able to discuss during the show that will kind of help producers set those animals up for the rest of their life.
Yeah, I think it's extremely critical that we start setting them up. And at the cow calf level, it's a tough level because it's where everything starts. We spend a lot of time on bull selection for whatever trait we may be wanting to enhance within our herd, and at the same time knowing that we're going to be selling animals. And I like to think that no matter what we do to those animals, we really want to make sure we're setting them up to succeed, and that the animal that we start with is very successful all the way through.
Perfect. Well, folks, we're going to take a break. More with Dr. Tim Parks after these messages. Hey folks, welcome to our Cattle First Minute. I'm Dr. Dan here, and thanks to Boehringer Ingelheim Vet Medica for sponsoring this. When we think about vaccination and vaccinating calves in the fall, or vaccinating your cows in the fall, or summer, or spring, it doesn't matter what time of year, we've got to treat vaccines responsibly. Because if you don't, that modified live vaccine becomes a modified dead vaccine. We want to make sure we keep it out of the sunlight. We want to make sure that we keep it cool. We want to make sure that you don't mix up more vaccine that you're going to utilize than what you would utilize in an hour. And when you do, make sure you put it in that cooler that keeps it dark and keeps it cool. All of these things, understanding that the syringes have to be clean so that these products work well. Putting a vaccine that is not efficacious into an animal means you vaccinate the animal, but you don't immunize the animal. And understanding that there's a difference between immunization and vaccination is important for Cattle First.
When you're in the cattle business, no matter how much it's a business, it still starts with cattle. It's this basic notion that sits at the core of how we approach things at Boehringer Ingelheim. We understand when you put the cattle first, it just naturally leads to doing the right things. If you want to do well in this business, you start by doing right. Take care of the cattle, and they'll take care of you.
ValleyVet.com is your one-stop shop for your every animal need. From prescription meds, vaccines, equipment, and more for the ranch to the show ring. Shop ValleyVet.com for fast shipping and great prices.
Valley Vet Supply. This segment is brought to you by the Beef Quality Assurance Program and the Kansas Beef Council, improving animal care and beef safety for more than 20 years.
Hey folks, welcome back to DocTalk. Dr. Dan Thompson here with Dr. Tim Parks, and we're doing this via distance thanks to COVID, and it's neither one of our styles to do things via distance, but you're going to have to bear with us as we can still get the show done and get information out to y'all. Dr. Parks is a friend and a colleague. He's a veterinarian up at Holton, Kansas, and he has been in practice in many years, sold his practice, and now has a platform to share his knowledge with us through Merck Animal Health. And just glad to have you here, Tim. Let's talk about setting these calves up from the get-go, from when they're first born, for preventing BRD.
When we start thinking about the newborn baby calf, we really, I like break it down. We got the spring calvers, we got the fall calvers, and as we think about spring calvers, scours comes to mind. We really think about that. We're at a time frame, northeast Kansas, where we have a chance to be wet. We come into the fall, we really focus a little bit more, get away from scours and start focusing on BRD. So we start to see some things that we can do in these baby calves to really start not only helping them at that time frame at birth to up to branding, but also really creating an opportunity that as we start to look at what things we can do in a precondition program, we're setting them up for a little bit better success at that time.
We see a lot of different platforms, and obviously colostrum intake is going to be, number one on everybody's list and things of that nature. But what are some of the other things that we can do as these calves start to hit the ground?
Well, we focus on colostrum, and then we got to understand that colostrum is there. It's the thing that's hopefully going to carry those calves through for those first 2-3 months. knowing that those are going to drop off and depending on the quality of colostrum and the amount that those calves get. But, we can vaccinate these calves and not only stimulate memory to help set them up for a precondition, but actually start to stimulate some active immunity. A lot of work's been done with intranasal vaccines as you start to see some of those come in. And just presenting that antigen to the nasal cavity, the mucosal surface, we're actually able to stimulate not just an IgA response, some secretory things going on within the mucosal surfaces, but also stimulate some memory and actual active immunity and get some IgG circulating. This becomes pretty important as we start thinking about this calf moving into the time frame of preconditioning, to where before, if we had a lot of maternal antibodies, we always have that concern that, are we going to get some blockage of our vaccine? But with this, knowing that we can stimulate memory, knowing that we can actually drive some antibodies, now we're looking at getting that amnestic booster response when we put preconditioned shots in, which just means we're going to see a response quicker than what we may have traditionally seen with some of our other programs.
You bet. Well, and I think it's important too, the one thing on that colostrum intake, you don't have to tag the calf as it hits the ground. The mom knows who it is, and let them get some colostrum, and then you can come in and do this tag and the intranasal and castrate them and do some things that you want to get done.
Yeah, that's right. We see a lot of them be done right at birth, but we all know that the calf getting up and getting the colostrum, that's the key. We got that mothering ability and getting to know each other. That's where these things really, that's where they take off. So we got to let that happen too.
Great. Well, let's take a break. When we come back, we're going to keep working through this life cycle of the calf and preventing BRD with Dr. Tim Parks.
Some call it a come-from-behind victory, an unlikely win, a reversal of fortune, snatching victory from the jaws of defeat. This is our moment, our victory dance, because we choose confidence. We choose Zuprevo for BRD treatment. Ask your veterinarian to prescribe Zuprevo. Zuprevo is a fast-acting, long-lasting BRD treatment that you can count on to get the job done. Choose confidence. Choose Zuprevo from Merck Animal Health.
ValleyVet.com is your one-stop shop for your every animal need, from prescription meds, vaccines, equipment, and more for the ranch to the show ring. Shop ValleyVet.com for fast shipping and great prices.
Valley Vet Supply.
This segment is brought to you by the Beef Quality Assurance Program and the Kansas Beef Council, improving animal care and beef safety for more than 20 years.
Hey folks, Dr. Dan here at DocTalk. Welcome back. Dr. Tim Parks is here with us. He is a technical services veterinarian at Merck Animal Health. He's a friend and colleague there in Holton, Kansas, and has a wealth of information. And Tim, as we left for the commercial break, we just gotten that baby kind of started, and now we got to start looking at that 2 to 3 months of age, or what we would call the branding time.
Yeah, when we look at that branding time, now we're dealing with a calf that we're getting out there and we're starting to have a pretty competent immune system. We're starting to see any maternal antibodies that they've really dropped off. We've got an animal that's really pretty low stress. Mom's right there. It's a great time to do some castrations, do some of those things. But it's also a great time to start getting some other vaccines into them. When we think about BRD, we tend to focus on the viral, IBR, BRSV, BVD, PI3, those viruses, but we really think about Mannheimias and Pastorellas, some of the bacterial components that we're really trying to fight with antibiotic therapy at the time of a respiratory disease. This is a great time to really start trying to set up some immunity there. We know that vaccines work best when animals aren't stressed. The lower the stress, the better response we're going to get to a vaccine. And if we start to think about that calf's lifetime and when we can intervene with it, branding time, when we do what we need to do to the calf and then turn it back out and let it go, get a little milk and mom lick on it a little bit, stress level's pretty low. And then if we start to think about beyond that time frame, then we're really getting into a preconditioned time frame. that's when we can really start to see a reduction in the amount of stress in those calves as well. We're starting to see some natural stresses hit those animals at that time frame, like our spring calves that we're getting ready to wean here. Grass quality's dropping off, vitamins and minerals are dropping off, parasite loads have probably increased. Lots of stresses, but we haven't gotten to that big stress weaning.
Yeah, and I keep talking to producers day in and day out that, acclimating their cows to the human-animal interaction. We used to think that we just got rid of that high-headed cow out of the herd. She always weaned the best calf, but we got rid of them just because of the bad habits she had and what she caused the rest of the herd to do. But the more and more we're finding is that's an animal that didn't trust us, and it built distrust across the herd so that people didn't show us, or cows didn't show us when things were going wrong.
Yeah, and if they don't trust us, that's one thing that we really try to stress, especially at feedlot levels and stocker levels. If they don't trust us, they're not going to let us know if they're sick. And if we don't pick them up, the key to success when it comes to BRD is early intervention. And if we're behind, we know that 12 hours behind can mean the difference between a successful treatment and a chronic. So we really need to make sure that these cattle are acclimated, that they're comfortable with us being around. If they look like a covey of quail when we pull in there, we've probably got a little work we can do with trying to get them used to.
So we got just a few seconds here, but just to set everybody up, when we come back, we're going to talk about some of the things you can do at that preconditioning or pre-weaning to set these calves up for success in the feedlot.
Just finished a fantastic continuing education wet lab with Dr. Cooper Williams, and he is the most fantastic ultrasonographer on the planet as far as I can tell. And just the hands-on part of this was great. Inspiring to go back and bone up on the anatomy and, learning the structures and finding the structures. So looking forward to that. The whole idea of regenerative medicine is really exciting to me. It's something that, because I live close to Dr. Arava, going through the steps of it and helping develop the PRP kit and the PRF kit, and it's been really fun to see it now, come into play here, and it's just a very exciting field. Stem cells, Corey and I recently did a case of stem cells with PRP, and it's just a really fun and effective treatment option. It's really nice to have that option of regenerative medicine. Enzo Discoveries is really exciting to follow because they are on the edge of it all and making it a reality. These kits that they've produced are so practical, easy to use. I think 2019 is just going to be an amazing year for them, just going to take off and branching into different markets, and it's really one to watch for sure.
ValleyVet.com is your one-stop shop for your every animal need. From prescription meds, vaccines, equipment, and more for the ranch to the show ring. Shop ValleyVet.com for fast shipping and great prices.
Valley Vet Supply.
This segment is brought to you by the Beef Quality Assurance Program and the Kansas Beef Council, improving animal care and beef safety for more than 20 years.
Hey folks, welcome back to DocTalk. Dr. Dan Thompson and Dr. Tim Parks here. And we're talking about getting calves, preventing calves from getting BRD. And Dr. Parks is an excellent source of information. He's a tech service vet, Merck Animal Health. So Tim, tell me about, preconditioning. What are some of your key points and items that we need to be doing?
When we start looking at that preconditioned time frame, I think one thing that we really need to focus on is worms. And I think we've spent a lot of time talking about the effects of internal parasites. So I really think, that's one thing we got to do. We need to get a dewormer in these animals, start to clean them out, start to reset the immune system to where it's really focused on something besides parasites. So that's one of the key things. And then it comes down to vaccination. In a pre-wean scenario, when we're going to kick them back out with mom for a couple weeks, hopefully, it's an opportune time to get that, to get a combination vaccine, get the viruses in there, get Mannheimia, get Pasturella in those calves, really give them the opportunity to set them up, to stimulate the immune system, to boost what we set up with our branding shots, that time frame, to where when we hit weaning, we've got protective levels there, and now we're just letting that animal, we're taking mom away and hopefully getting them on the bunk and going through a low stress type wean to where these animals are going to be able to move right on in. Continue gaining through the weaning process would be the ideal circumstance if we could do that. That's going to come back from handling and just setting these animals up and getting them ready to go.
Yeah, that's when we were working, Dr. Tom and I were working with some groups out of Australia, and we asked them how much their calves lost during the first week after weaning, and they said, lost, they gained. And so having that understanding of focusing on all levels for those calves is vitally important.
Yeah, we can, we just got to make sure we do everything at this time frame in that calf's life to set it up, because we know stresses are going to hit it. When we wean it, that's going to be a stress. When we start to move it through the production cycles, whether they go to a sale barn, whether they go to a background yard, or whether they go directly to the feed yard, we're going to introduce them to different stresses. But what we can do in that early time frame is really the key to helping them get through everything else that they come in contact with later.
So let's kind of button this up then. Let's just go through if you were going to hit your 3 or 4 things that producers watching this show today focus on a calf from birth to weaning that you would cover.
I think when we start looking at birth, we were going to really focus. If you've got problems between birth and a branding time frame, work with your veterinarian to figure out what's the most opportune time to hit them, what products to use. But when we get to that branding time frame, we're talking about generally a calf that's on a cow that's not pregnant and a cow that hadn't been turned out. Great time to use modified live viruses in those animals with no safety concerns. Do those types of things. If we got the cow right there when we're working these calves, great time to get a modified live in, because it does set us up for other things that we can do later on in preconditioned programs. So get that modified live. We're looking at a branding, a virus, a blackleg, putting some Mannheimia Pasturella products in. Don't forget the implant. I mean, we're selling pounds at the end of the day. Anything we can do there. And then as we get into pre-wean, that's the time when what we're hoping to do is we're focusing on a booster. We want that booster response to the vaccines that we've given earlier. That's what's going to drive us towards protective levels, and the difference between having an animal that's kind of ready to be weaned and an animal that's definitely ready to be weaned.
Awesome. Well, thanks for being on the show today. You're always a great source of information. Miss being an hour away from you and having the visits and the families and all that. Folks, Dr. Tim Parks. Remember, if you want to know what we do at DocTalk, you can find us on the web at www.doctalktv.com. Always work with your local veterinarian. And for Dr. Tim Parks, I'm Dr. Dan Thompson, and we'll see you down the road.
DocTalk is brought to you by Merck Animal Health, the science of healthier animals.
As dependable as the sunrise, in dairy parlors, open pastures, on ranches and feed yards across America. A place where reputation is more than a name, where the science of healthier animals is a way of life. It's the responsibility that drives who we are and what we do. Every decision, every day. It's your livelihood and our responsibility.
ValleyVet.com is your one-stop shop for your every animal need, from prescription meds, vaccines, equipment, and more for the ranch to the show ring. Shop ValleyVet.com for fast shipping and great prices.
Valley Vet Supply.